Hello and welcome to Understory Learning. I'm Hattie,
And I'm Caitlin.
and we're here to share our stories and experiences as we explore the magical forests and woodlands on our doorsteps. We are so excited to have you with us here today for today's adventure. And I just wanted to give you a bit of a run through of what we're going to cover today. So we're going to be looking at conifer trees, which are the evergreens, many people will know them as, and the critters that like to live on them and among them.
There were a couple of things that I wanted to bring up from our previous episode. So, first thing, and I did manage to correct this in the actual video, but when I was talking about my favorite tree, I was saying the wrong name. The tree behind me is actually a Bauhinia pipera. I think that's how you pronounce it. And I'm not quite sure why I had the wrong word in my brain, but I did. So, I just need to make that correction. And last week, you gave us such a beautiful description about your favorite silver birch and what it represents. And I wanted to just tell you, so the Bauhinia purpura, it represents beauty and grace and elegance, but it's also associated with prosperity, vitality, and good fortune. Now, through my research, also found that so there's many different types of Bauhinias, and one of the Bauhinias is actually the flower of Hong Kong,
Oh,
which is really cool. Yeah, so that was something interesting that I learned. And then my other favorite tree was the baobab, which I just really love, and so that represents resilience, endurance, and the interconnectedness of life in African cultures. Sometimes it's referred to as the tree of life as well.
oh wow.
Those are my two favorite trees there and what they represent.
And good choices. Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea, especially about the baobab. Wow.
Yeah, no, and also something else because that just reminds me of all the Africanness that was happening in our previous episode. I mentioned to you the hardy-dar that was busy making that noise at one
Oh,
point
the
in our
bird.
yes, the bird that was busy making a lot of noise in the background of our last video. This is the hardy-dar ibis. It is a very common bird all throughout South Africa, and they are not very loved by most South Africans because they, as you heard, make so much noise and they will wake you up in the morning. They will just make noise no matter what time of day it is, and
They're
they
quite
become very
shrill too, aren't they?
they are, but they're actually quite a pretty bird, and I like how their wings like shine in the sunlight.
I love their beak. It's like a long, kind of curved beak. It's quite exciting.
Yes.
And they're a
Perfect to
lovely
get
silvery
into.
colour.
Yeah, they are a lovely silvery color, and so the sides of their wings often have quite a beautiful shimmer to them. So they love to make holes in our grass and to get the worms and things. So that's a little bit of information from our previous episode that I just noticed that I needed to bring up.
Well, thank you for catching us up on those. They're really interesting. All three golden.
Thank you. All right. So Hattie, you've already mentioned that today our topic is all about conifers and critters.
Yeah.
Shall I get started on the conifers first?
Yes, tell me what you've found because we've separated our research up this
Yes.
week, and Caitlin's focused on the trees and I've focused on the critters. I hope that you'll enjoy this information. And before I forget, coming up we also have an understory of the week at the end, which I get into a bit of a sticky situation, but we'll get on to more about that at the end. And also, if any of today's episode resonates with you, and you have some stories that you would like to share about conifers in your area, or critters in your area, or just anything to do with nature at all, we again invite you to send in any stories that you have, any understory of the week that you have, so that we can read them and maybe share them on next week's episode.
On that note, if anyone does want to share with us, you can email us at understorylearning@gmail.com, or pop us a message on our Instagram page, understory_learning.
So, Caitlin, tell us about conifers.
So, Hattie, pine trees. I spoke a little bit about them last week because my local forest is a pine tree forest. But did you know that there are about 115 species of evergreen conifers?
In the world?
Hmm.
Okay. I
Which
didn't
is,
know.
I didn't know that either. And primarily they are found in the northern temperate regions, which
Okay, so
I
that'd
think
be
is,
like where I am.
yes, exactly. So areas like you are, yeah, those temperate areas, the UK, bit of Romania as well. You get coniferous forests, which is what I've got. But then you often find them mixed throughout normal forests as well throughout the world, which really does speak to exactly what you were mentioning last week, where you were saying that you've got both evergreens and
The deciduous ones. So conifers are the evergreens, like you just said, and then deciduous are the ones that lose their leaves in the
yes,
autumn and grow them again in the spring.
exactly. Something that I obviously learning that there's so many different species. I was like, okay, well, how do you recognize, how do we identify them? So there's really three things that you need to look at when identifying a pine tree or a evergreen. You're going to look at the bark. So different trees have slightly different bark. Pines obviously have more of a similar bark style, but they are different. You're going to look at the pine clusters as well. And you're going to look at the pine cones. Now, when I'm talking about the pine clusters, that is the pine needles usually are connected to each other. They're like in little groups. You get groups where it's just one by itself, but then you also get ones where it's like three, four, five, or two together. And depending on how many are in that cluster, will help you to identify whichever pine tree you're looking at, which I
Okay.
thought was quite interesting and made me really think that I need to go back because I've made assumptions on which is my pine tree. And I'm pretty sure mine is the ponderosa pine, which I need to now go back and check, now knowing that depending on how many needles are connected to each other can help me confirm that it is a
Mhm.
ponderosa pine. Also, Ali might pop up in the background. He's just lying here in the sun next to me.
Aw.
And then through my research as well, I learned that pine trees are not the only needle bearing trees. Do you know any other needle bearing trees that you can think of?
So like spruce and fir, right?
Yes. And so I've done a little bit of research into I, how to tell the difference between them. Do you know how to tell the difference between them?
So the Scots
Okay.
pine is really, really tall and it kind of has quite a large, I guess, head of leaves and branches at the
Yes.
top. And it's quite a bushy tree, but
Yes.
spread out, not all the way down to the bottom. Whereas the Douglas fir, it kind of, you can, I mean,
Yeah.
think about
Like a
Christmas trees. It
Christmas tree.
starts at the top and it keeps going all the way down to the base.
Okay. Interesting. And that's two very good ways to know, like seeing how far those branches come down.
Mm.
I was looking at how we can look from the needles and trying to figure it out. So, spruce trees, their needles tend to be connected to a twig by a sterigmata. So, the sterigmata is almost like a peg structure which kind of connects your needle to the tree, whereas your fir trees, their needles are directly connected to the twigs. So a
Okay,
bit, yeah, a bit like they grow straight out of the twig. They don't really have anything connecting them.
so that's the difference between the spruce and the fir,
Yes.
or the spruce and the fir and the pine. So like,
And the pine, yeah. Yeah,
oh, right.
and the pine. So if you're having a look at your tree and you've got needles that have more than one connection, they are most likely your pine trees. Your spruce trees have this sterigmata holding their needle to the tree. And your fir trees, literally the needle grows straight out of the twig. So they're
Okay.
directly connected to the twig. Through this, what I learned is really your first point is probably going to be looking at the needles before you look at your bark and your cones, because that will then also just help you figure out where you kind of need to look further into. It's probably the easiest way to kind of decide, is it a
Yeah,
pine
well,
tree?
I suppose because pine cones, And the fruits on these trees are only going to come out at a certain time of year, aren't they?
Mhm.
So if
Yeah.
you're trying to identify at any other time, then they're not going to help you. And
No.
then typically, if you're in some place that's quite dense, then you might not necessarily be able to get to the trunk of the tree, but you'd be able to get, like, the branches might be close to you. So,
Yeah,
so being able to identify by the needles is probably the most accessible way to do it as well, right?
definitely, because you'll find needles along the floor as well. So
Mm,
you might
yeah,
not even have to get closer. You can just work off of the needles as a good starting point and then see which road that takes you down.
nice.
Yeah.
And last week we talked a little bit about plantations because your forest is a plantation, right?
Yes.
Do you know why the plantations are there? Like, do you know the purpose of planting them with conifers and not a deciduous tree?
I do. Your pine trees specifically are very good for construction, and for paper products as well. But you can also get things like turpentine, wood tars, and oils as well.
Okay,
But then I also found that a lot of the time as well, your pine trees are cultivated as ornamentals. So that would be more
so like
just
a garden,
for the looks for your gardens and stuff.
right?
But then what I found really interesting as well is that they are sometimes planted in reforestation projects, as windbreakers.
Yes, I read this too. How interesting.
Yeah.
I think Scots pine, I think maybe it was used by farmers as windbreakers around their
Yes.
fields.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they are, yeah, they've been used for years and years. So they're very useful trees in terms of those sorts of things. But also, Hattie, and I don't know if you ever made the connection because I didn't make this connection. Pine nuts come from pine trees.
Yeah, 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 yeah. The things that we put in pesto that taste really delicious.
Yes, exactly. And so, what I found really interesting about that, there's about 29 species of pine trees that give you pine nuts that are edible.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so none of which I really recognize the name of. I looked through, so you get like the California foothill pine, the Swiss pine, Korean pine, stone pine. Those are all options to get your
Lots of
pine
different
nut.
kinds.
Yeah, lots of different pines. And so obviously we know pine nuts are great for putting in pestos, but they're also really good for helping get your energy levels up. So, because they've got a lot of iron, protein, and magnesium, they help to increase your levels of energy.
And they're nice toasted on a salad, aren't they?
Yes, that is a great way to put them in. But then obviously we just got to be very mindful because as most foods, pine nuts it is possible to have an allergy to. But they're just so good and yummy, aren't they? I
Yes.
love putting them on a salad for that little bit of crunch in a typical pesto. But I'm sure there's so many other ways to use them that we're not thinking of.
Yeah.
So if you guys
But
have any ways, please share
absolutely.
them with us. Yeah.
Anything that you know of. Just a caveat with that as well. Anytime that you're foraging for food or you are trying to identify plants that you might want to eat, always be very, very careful and maybe ask for the advice of somebody who is qualified in that
Mm,
sort of thing because it can be really easy to misidentify. And
yes.
I know speaking about pines, there are some pine needles that can be edible, but there are some that are quite poisonous. So it's the kind of thing that you need to know exactly what you're looking for because if
Mm,
they look all very similar to you, then it's really easy to misidentify. And I know that I certainly wouldn't be able to forage for pine needles at this stage. So anything that you're foraging, make sure that you've got somebody who knows what they're doing, who's qualified in this, um, with you.
yes. So that's such a great point as well. Thank you for bringing that up because it's so true how often there's two things that look very similar.
Yes.
And I suppose that's an adaptation on the plant or the animal that is edible and not toxic, because then it allows it to look similar to the ones that are toxic
Yeah,
so that it doesn't get eaten as often.
you don't want to be sorry with misidentifying and foraging.
No, you don't. No, you don't. And I don't think I've ever like properly been foraging. Um, it's just not something we've got in our local areas. I suppose because we don't really have forests
Mm,
around me. It's not really something I'm used to. So thank you for bringing that up.
that's all right. That's all right.
But otherwise, pine trees, Hattie, provide a, a huge habitat and a variety of other ecosystems for animals, birds, squirrels in the area, especially the pine, with the pine seeds being such a great food source.
Did you know as well, two
Yeah.
things kind of leading on from that? So with the pine bark, right, the inner bark apparently can be used to make rope.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I had no idea about that.
I didn't
And
know that.
then let's move on to pine cones for a second because they are quite useful for a number of things. First of all, I think traditionally pine cones have been used as like a dye. So if
Oh,
you're trying to make natural dyes and things for your clothes or maybe for like to create natural paints
interesting.
or whatever, use that for. Pine cones create quite a nice, rich brown colour. Also, they can be used as fire starters. So if you're out in the forest, and always be careful with fires, first of all, make sure that you're away from anything. If you were camping and you needed something to start your campfire, pine cones tend to be dry, and when they're dry, obviously you only want to use dry stuff.
Mm,
They're a really good fire starter. And it makes sense because they're dry, they're brittle, and they have lots of spaces for the oxygen to um,
yes.
go
I
between.
was also thinking of like the oils and the sap that they've got, which would help them burn probably.
Yeah, that's true. There'll be all sorts of stuff in there. I wonder what they smell like when you burn them.
I wonder if they just smell like really piney.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Interesting.
Yeah.
Feel
Well, I'll
tempted.
have to. When I get onto the fire starting part of our course, I'll grab
Try it out.
some pine cones and give it a go.
Let us know how it goes. But there's some more things that you can use pine cones for as well. They're very
Yes.
versatile and they are so much fun. I don't know how many of you guys have used pine cones to create Christmas decorations or decorations for your home in the autumn or winter. I remember when I was a child and we used to have a summer fair and we'd use anything and everything that we could to create like animals with. And
Cute.
I think if you kept a few pine cones left over from the winter time, you could definitely use one to make like a some kind of hedgehog or
Yeah.
I don't know, penguin or something. Just
Even
thinking
if
about the
you,
shape.
yeah, pop a bit of cotton in there and make like a little a sheep.
Absolutely. You can paint them and you can make them glittery. I feel like my inner
Yeah.
child is coming out. They're really good for putting in bug hotels. So if you're trying to make like an insect hotel to invite all those insects to, then they're a really good sort, well, a habitat for some of
Mm.
those creatures that like small dark spaces. You can break them up into mulch for your garden if you're a gardener.
Have you ever taken a pine cone and put like peanut butter or something that is edible by like animals, honey, something like that, and then dipped it in birdseed and hung it up
Oh,
in
so you
the
can
tree?
make a bird feeder. That's
Yes.
such a good idea, especially in the winter months, because in the winter they've got less food and
It's a
stuff.
little
And
bit more difficult for them to
yeah, yeah,
find.
yeah. And some
So
people
that
like to have them in the garden so they can watch them.
it's also really good
That's a good
as a
idea.
bird feeder. Yeah.
You don't have to go and buy anything then. You literally just
Use what you've got.
use
And you
what you
probably have to
got.
buy
Exactly.
bird seeds, but other than that, you're good.
Yeah, that's true. Last week we talked about how typically the pine soils are quite acidic. But in my research, because I was looking this up and I was trying to figure out is it the pine needles that make the soil acidic? Because obviously, like that would make sense, right? They're dropping onto the
Mm.
floor. And it turns out the pine needles are very acidic, but typically they don't lower the pH of the soil.
Oh, interesting.
Um, so, like, you can use pine needles for your garden, for example. They're a really handy mulch to put around your
Yes.
plants because they keep the bugs off, they keep the mud off, they drain well, but they don't change the pH of your soil. Which I was like, well, I wonder why then the
Yeah.
pH is quite acidic. of that soil. And maybe that's just where it thrives best, where those trees thrive
Maybe.
best, which would make sense, wouldn't it? Because if you have a conifer that has acidic needles, well, those needles aren't going to get acidic by themselves. So
Yeah.
they're going to need to take that from the soil. So, yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing to note because everywhere that I read about this, it was like, it's a myth. The pine needles don't make the soil acidic, which I had completely assumed.
Yes, I assumed the same. Okay, so the soil itself is already acidic, and then that
It
just
must be. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
continues. Yeah.
But then sticking with that kind of, obviously the pine's grown in a certain place, there is 1.5 million hectares of coniferous plantation is in the UK. In the UK alone.
Wow, that's
So
incredibly
that's a
interesting.
lot, isn't it? The reason being is because up until, well, for a long time in human history, as since farming has been an established thing, right? And people have cut down trees to create agriculture and to
Mhm.
make space for homes and all sorts of things. And so the decline in forest, in native, natural, ancient forests, has been quite big.
Yes.
And prior to World War One, there was 5% of forest in the UK or something, really, really small. And there was a big turnover. There was like, this isn't okay. We need these for timber. Wood is a massive source of fuel and all sorts of things that we can't or we don't know how to live without at this
Yeah.
stage in our society's evolution. And so there was a big movement to reforest. And so they planted loads and loads of coniferous forests because conifers are really good for timber because they grow so tall and they're very
Yeah.
strong, dense wood. And they created all of these coniferous forests. And then I guess over the next like decade, we've been harvesting from them. But I got into learning about how these can support wildlife because kind of from what I've learned so far, it kind of felt like there wasn't very much that they could support because you're like, well, they're very tall, like there's not so many
Yeah.
birds. There's some in the higher
Higher
tops,
up,
but
but nothing really down low.
yeah, but nothing really down low, and there's less of an understory. So what's growing there? If there's nothing growing there, what's living there?
Yeah.
And if you've not got like all of those critters that you would have in deciduous soil, what have you got? So it felt to me like they were basically these plantations that weren't supporting wildlife, but I'm so wrong with that. First of all, let's go below ground level, inside the soil. The coniferous forests are so diverse. Like there's so many microbes living in there. There's so many like little critters living in there. You've got your springtails and your weevils and stuff that live in
Yeah.
there and fungi and all sorts. Everything I read was like it's so diverse underneath the soil that we tend to just look at what we can see, which is the green stuff above and the
Yes.
animals above. But actually, most of the diversity in your forest is underneath the soil. It's the stuff that you can't see, which I think is very interesting because it's quite mysterious, isn't it? You can't see it, so you can't picture it. And if you can't see it, it's like it's not there. So
Hmm.
it's something that I've gone my whole life not even thinking about. And then I'm reading about this world that's underground. It's just very mysterious, very exciting. I'm
Yes.
excited to learn more about it. And then you look above ground, and it really comes down to how well managed the forest is. So, if it's appropriately managed to support biodiversity, what you'll see is the ages of the trees are different. So, you'll have some really tall, older trees,
Mm.
you'll have some smaller, younger trees, and that kind of height difference, width difference in the trees is going to support different things. You've got something smaller. There's birds that like to live on a smaller tree. You've got
Yeah.
those big high trees. You've got your birds of prey love to live up high.
Clear.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's not just about the age, but also about how they're kind of distributed across the forest.
Yes, so how close together they are or how far apart.
Exactly, because there's benefits to having some close together, but also massive benefits to having clearings. So there's one
Mm.
kind of butterfly that is really rare in the UK. It wasn't always rare, it is now. I think it's listed on our red list
Oh, okay.
It's vulnerable, and it's a pearl-bordered fritillary butterfly. It's
Wow.
really beautiful. It's like a honey brown color, and it's got these black chevron kind of markings on its wings, and it's quite
Okay.
bold towards the center of the wing, and then it disperses a bit towards the end. And it's called pearl bordered because it looks like there's little pearls along the edge of the wings. And that's when its wings are open, right? When its wings are closed, the underside of the wing, I think it looks like stained glass. It's so beautiful. It's
Yeah.
like a beautiful mix of like red and brown and white. It's really
Oh,
pretty. Anyway, they really like clearings
okay.
because they like variation in their environment. So you've got some shrub and you've got some trees and you've got some space. And they fly really close to the floor and they eat wildflowers and things,
Oh,
or
okay.
they eat the nectar from them. So they really like those clearing spaces, and they really like to have, if you think about a clearing, right? There's sunlight coming through, you can create space for other things to grow. My research has told me that when you don't just invest in creating these plantations and just put in 100
Rows
trees
and
here and
rows.
grow them, you actually focus on the clearings and the edges and focus on actually creating a habitat around the edges that you're not going to use for timber, but you are going to use for biodiversity. Then you can support these animals like these butterflies and some other things. Like two of our reptiles, we don't have many reptiles in the UK,
Okay.
but there are two that really like coniferous forests, especially when they're well managed. And
Hmm.
they are both, again, very rare. We've got a sand lizard,
Okay.
which is your typical small brown lizard that likes to live in on the sand, like sand dunes and sandy heaths
Hmm.
and things. And then also a smooth snake, which is not poisonous to humans, but it does look a bit like an adder, and adders are, they can be
Oh,
harmful. So the way that you can tell the difference between a smooth snake and an adder is the smooth snake has a less bold pattern on its back, whereas the adder has
interesting.
quite a bold pattern. I didn't look into adders and whether they like coniferous, but from what I know about them, they quite like a lot of shrubby areas and things
Yeah.
anyway.
Hidey
So we'll
holes.
move away from adders and back onto the smooth snake. What I thought was interesting is obviously snakes are reptiles and reptiles are cold-blooded.
Yes.
Okay? And if you're cold-blooded, you don't generate heat yourself, you generate it from the sun. So they need a lot of space to be able to regenerate that heat and to build that energy back up. And without the sun, they don't have enough energy to feed and to hunt. So they hibernate all through the winter, but in the summer, they need those clearings, they need those open spaces.
Hmm.
So those plantations, they can be so appropriately managed for this biodiversity, for all of
Yeah.
these animals to live, including squirrels. We've got red squirrels that live there, loads of owls and things. And they can actually be a really fantastic habitat that is, especially if they've got our native trees in there as well, which are
Hmm.
going to help out native insects and native
Yes.
birds. They can be
Biodiversity.
useful ecosystems to have. So I think my view on plantations has certainly become a lot more favorable than it was, because I always thought plantations is just for commercial, but actually
Yes.
it can be for both. And if a forest is managed properly, then it can support us and it can support the planet as well.
Mm.
And it's kind of like a best of both worlds thing, but it's a balance, isn't it? It's about getting that
Being
balance
that balance. And it's about
completely right.
having people who understand the importance of that balance and being willing to put that work in. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Which I hope we'll get more and more people doing, because it's such a movement, isn't it, now, about learning more about your environment and caring more about it. Like kids are learning from a really early age that they need to prioritize this sort of thing. And so I think the more people that we have caring about it, and this is our job too, it's like we're on this journey so that we can share the natural world with more people. If you
Mm-hmm.
understand something, you care about it. If you don't know about it, you don't care about it. So
No.
it's like the more people that we can show how beautiful and amazing and abundant this world can be, they're going to care about it, they're going to want to protect it. And then we've got so much more of a fighting chance to have beautiful spaces for many, many years to come, is my hope.
Mine, we have just got to be doing our part for this big push, and we'll get there slowly but surely.
Exactly, exactly. It's little steps, and we've
Exactly.
all got a part that we can play and that we should play, I think.
No, 100%. And I think all you can do is play your part. We can all sit and stress about everybody else's part, but as long as you're doing your part, that's all that matters.
Exactly.
So I think it's time for our understory of the week, Hattie.
Understory of the week, here we come. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, I got myself into a bit of a sticky situation
Yeah.
yesterday. So this week we've got a project coming up that involves bugs in a forest. And part of
Amazing.
that is identifying those bugs, right? And there's going to be a bit of a treasure hunt for finding these bugs so we can see what we've got and then learn about them. Anyway, I had to go and do a recce of this
Mm.
site. So I had to go and check out what bugs I could find. And so I did my own little bug treasure hunt in this little piece of forest. And I found some beautiful things. And I really got carried away and taking photos of these butterflies. And I saw a damselfly and some ants and some bees and a couple of
I saw
spiders.
you posted 2 pictures, right? I
Yeah.
see both of those. They look gorgeous. Firstly, you're really talented at taking pictures, but those are really, really
It's on my
good.
phone, Caitlin. It's on my phone.
And listen, I've gone on a hike with you before. I know that all you do is snap pictures of nature. So
Yeah.
I can't wait to see more of those.
Yeah, well, my plan was I was like, I'm going to see how many bugs I can find, take pictures of them, and then come back and make sure I know what they are and like get some facts on them, get some information on them. And I'm halfway through this forest and I look down and I realize because I'm walking through, there's a lot of understory, it's very grown. There's lots of like in the field layer as well, which is kind of anything that comes up to your knee.
Hmm.
It was very overgrown. There was lots of grasses and they were coming up like as high as here on me. It was very grown and I was like, we're gonna have to find a like make sure that this is an
Halfway.
accessible site, make sure we can find the right pathway to go through. But it was walkable. And I looked down and I'm covered in these little grass seeds, and they are I'm absolutely covered in them. I can't even see my clothes anymore. I'm covered in these grass seeds that are they're like little burrs. We talked about burrs last week,
Yes, we did. We did.
and they're really, really tiny, but I'm covered.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I've got a lift from somebody that I don't know very well yet, and I'm like, I can't get in his really nice car that's beautiful and clean, covered in these grass
Covered in
seeds.
birds.
So I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to turn around, give myself some time to de-seed myself. So I'm outside the forest and I'm picking off these seeds because I try scraping them off. They won't just scrape off. I have to
No.
pick them off one by one. I am there for ages picking off these seeds. And then I look at my bag and I made a mistake. And this is all a learning journey. This is why
What?
forest schools exist, right? So that
Yep.
you can have a safe space to make mistakes. So this bag
What
is
a cute
not the best.
bag. What a cute bag.
Thank you. It was a gift from a student, and
Oh,
I love it so much.
how
But
special.
I mean, you wouldn't know that from how I treated it yesterday, would you? So,
Well, you didn't know yesterday.
no, I didn't. And now I do know. And everybody listening, do not take fabric bags into the forest. It's a terrible idea. Get something that those birds are not going to stick to. This has tassels on the bottom.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've ever tried to pick burrs out of a dog's ear when the dog has like really fluffy ears and they're
Yes.
basically mats and you're like, am I going to have to just cut these out?
Yes.
That's what this was like. And now you can see they're all nice and fluffy again. They're probably absolutely not what they were once, but it took me so long. In fact, there's still some little ones in here, and I was just like pulling them out bit by bit, decombing
No,
it.
Hattie.
Yeah, it was a disaster, but it was a fun disaster because we got an understory of the week out of it, and I learned a lesson.
And that's, you said it earlier, but it's all just about making mistakes and learning those lessons in safe environments. And that's all this is. It's a safe environment for you to make those mistakes and for you to learn. And at the end
Exactly.
of the day, like, it's an experience, and your bag is okay and you're okay and nothing big or bad happened. And I think that's why these things are so important, is to make those mistakes and have those moments where, like, oh my gosh, everything is a disaster, but actually it's not that bad.
No, exactly. And the experience means that every time you go out into nature, it's going to be that little bit more easy because you know what to
Mhm.
expect and you've learned a little bit. There's always going to be new lessons to learn, which is the magic of it, right? But the
Yes.
more that you know and the more that you've experienced, also the more you can help other people and you can guide other people, which is exactly what we're seeking to do. So this week when I'm with those people, I can be like, don't take that into the forest. Be careful of the grass seeds because you are going to be covered. We had that question last week, didn't we, about is the burr the plant or is the seed? And we said we think it's the seed, right?
We did. And so I did do a little bit of research, and actually, this is a great little segue into that. The burr is the seed. It's that seed
Okay,
covering. And the reason why it's so sticky is so that it can get dispersed, right? It's
right.
so there are, if I remember correctly from what I taught my year threes, there are four main ways of seed dispersal. There is wind, explosion, which is that mechanical movement, the water, and then animals. So the animals eating the seeds and then
Of
dispersing them,
course.
or the animals like it getting stuck on their fur and then
Right,
being
okay.
further along. So it's one of those four seed dispersal methods. And so that's what I think is so cool, is like I always remember really annoyed about these seeds sticking to me. But then as you grow and as you learn that actually that's just nature doing its job, and the fact that it's created such a cool job, like the fact
Yeah.
that through time it has had these adaptations where now it is sticky so that it can be dispersed. I just think nature is incredible, and I think we, yeah, have no idea how. I mean, so I'm not a biologist or any sort of ologist, um, and so it blows my mind to think of all these adaptations that have led to this point.
It's amazing, isn't it? And when you start, like it's something as small as a blackjack, right?
Hmm.
A farmer's friend, something as small and seemingly insignificant that you're not thinking about in your everyday. I remember last week you were like, I don't know why farmers are so interested in these, and then we start looking into it. You
Yep.
realize they're amazing. Like on the surface, they're irritating, frustrating. They create a lot of work, but then you start looking into them. You start looking into what eats them. You start looking into where they grow, why they grow.
Hmm.
You start looking into our relationship with them and how we can benefit from them, but also how birds can benefit from them, how
Yeah.
so many things can. And then you start to realize that this is amazing. You could just really
Mhm.
go down a tunnel with anything, I think. Any kind of plant, go down a tunnel with it. And
Oh, completely.
fascinating.
It just changes your perspective on that plant as
It
well.
does. Really, really, really. Like
And one of the,
nettles. You know,
yes.
your association growing up with it is they hurt, they
Hmm.
sting me, they cause a rash. I do not want to go near them. And then growing up, I've learned that they're good for tea, soup. So there's so many things you don't even realize how much of a friend they are because you've grown up afraid of them because they've hurt you one time,
Yeah.
which is a very valid reason to be afraid of them, of course. But I think this is where this journey is going to be so exciting because we are learning
Mhm.
so much.
Yes. And I think it's just really beneficial for us. And then if you've got any stories about any herbs or plants or weeds that you want to share with us that your mind has been changed on, please pop us an email or a message, because I just think it's so interesting being from a whole bunch of different places around the world. I think we're going to have a lot of different stories. And like, you hadn't heard about the blackjack or the farmer's friend, and you're constantly talking about plants and stuff that I've like not heard of before, that I go and research or I go and look at. And there's a lot of similarities between them worldwide. But I
Mm.
think the more we can share this international knowledge, the deeper our knowledge becomes and the better and stronger our knowledge of our environment becomes as well.
Yes, absolutely. And the more connected we become in this big mission that we all have to connect more with the planet and to help the planet and to create a positive impact, the more connected we are with each other, the more of a difference we can make, isn't it? And the more we can explore. Like I'm exploring South Africa from my chair. Like I don't have to hop on a plane to come and see you. I'm armchair traveling because you're sharing your stories, and I feel like I'm there seeing those plants and smelling those plants and feeling those plants all through my imagination. So the more that
Yeah.
you guys can share stories with us, we want to know. We want to know what you've got. We want to know not just conifers and critters. Like we want to know about all of it.
Yeah.
Anything that you find interesting, anything that you want us to explore a little bit more, like let us know, please.
Yeah. We are here to listen and share,
We are.
and we're very excited to do so.
Yes, we are.
Thank you very much for joining us on today's adventure. We hope you enjoyed hearing what we've been up to, and we look forward to hearing what you have been up to. If you would like to pop us an understory of the week or share any information with us, you can email us at understorylearning@gmail.com, or you can message us on Instagram, understory_learning. Other than that, we hope you have fun exploring, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you
Bye.
next time. Bye.